The sun hung low over the vast, sun-bleached plains of the Wyoming Territory. The year was 1887, but out here it could have been yesterday or 100 years ago. The land didn't care. Dust devils twisted through abandoned cattle trails. A lone hawk circled high above jagged hills. The world stretched wide and empty, harsh and unforgiving, where only the hard survived, and the weak were buried and forgotten. Out here, the land forgets your name. The wind swallows your past, and a man can live 10 years with nothing but ghosts for company. Just beyond the hills, tucked against the rolling slope of sagebrush and scattered rock, sat a solitary ranch. The wood of the cabin was weather-beaten, sun-cracked, the color long leached away by wind and time. Dust coated the windows. Fence lines sagged like weary men in the aftermath of battle. The cattle were few, lean, stubborn creatures grazing listlessly among brittle grass. And on horseback, riding the perimeter with silent precision, was Clay Maddox. He looked every bit the man the territory had carved out of loss and hard living. Mid-40s, lean and wiry, sharp-featured as a blade. His face was a roadmap of grief. Deep creases at the corners of his eyes, sunspots, and weather lines across the backs of his hands. His battered hat shaded eyes that were sharp, yet dulled by something heavier. Grief. Weariness. Maybe both. His rifle rested in the saddle scabbard, his boots coated in the dust of forgotten trails. He rode slow, careful, surveying the fences and the barren hills beyond. It wasn't wolves or cattle rustlers that haunted this stretch of land. It was emptiness, the kind that gnawed at a man's soul when the world took everything. But Clay Maddox hadn't always been alone. There was a time, before the war, before the fever, before the graves. That time came back in fragments, jagged memories that hit like a blow to the ribs. A young woman's laughter, soft and warm as summer rain. A little boy's bare feet pounding through tall grass, giggles trailing behind him. Clay's arms wrapped around them, both beneath a blazing sunset sky, the promise of tomorrow heavy in the air. Then the war came, the flags, the gunpowder, the men screaming and falling in muddy fields. And after that, the fever. No doctors, no mercy, just graves. Behind the ranch, Clay reined in his horse and dismounted, boots crunching on dry grass. He stood before 2 wooden crosses, weathered by sun, storm, and sorrow. The names carved with a blade, faded but still legible. Sarah Maddox, James Maddox, his wife, his son, buried side by side beneath the endless sky. Clay's jaw tightened. The only sound was the soft groan of the wind sliding through the hills. His hand drifted to the silver locket hanging from his neck, hidden beneath his shirt. Silence pressed in, heavy as the clouds gathering beyond the ridge. That night, the wind rattled the shutters of the small cabin. Inside, the fire crackled in the hearth, shadows dancing along the rough-hewn walls. Clay sat at the old pine table, eating in silence beans, bread, coffee gone cold. The only sound was the faint creak of timber and the hiss of wind sneaking through cracks in the walls. A worn photograph sat beside his plate, edges curled with age. The faded image showed a younger Clay, his arms around Sarah, her eyes bright, her smile soft. The boy, James, perched on his lap, full of mischief and life. Clay stared at the photograph, thumb tracing its outline, remembering the warmth, the laughter, the promises. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, and then it was gone, buried beneath the weight of memory. His fingers closed around the silver locket. For a moment, his hand trembled, the smallest crack in a wall built tall and strong over the years. Then his jaw set, his hand hardened. He snapped the locket shut and tucked it beneath his shirt, where the world couldn't see the weakness, where even he could pretend it wasn't there. Pushing back from the table, Clay grabbed his rifle and crossed the room to the door. When he opened it, Cool night air swept in, heavy with the scent of rain and distant earth. The ranch sprawled in silence before him. Beyond, the hills rolled like sleeping beasts beneath the ink-black sky. Far off, lightning flickered along the horizon, illuminating jagged clouds piling over the hills, black and heavy, crawling toward the ranch like something alive. A storm was coming. Clay stood there for a long while, the wood of the porch solid beneath his boots, his eyes scanning the darkness as the first distant rumble of thunder echoed across the plains. But even in a place like this, fate finds a way in. Sometimes it knocks, sometimes it kneels. The wind stirred the dry grass as Clay's eyes narrowed on the horizon, his face a mask of quiet defiance and old sorrow. The storm crept closer, and with it everything was about to change. The storm rolled in fast. Rain lashed the windows of the cabin. Wind howled through the cracks in the walls. Thunder shook the earth, rattling the tin roof overhead. Inside, Clay stoked the fire, his rifle propped within reach. The room flickered with shadows as the flames danced, casting long shapes along the walls. He was used to storms. On the plains, they came sudden and fierce, like God himself reminding men how small they were. But tonight, there was something else in the air, a different weight pressing down on the land. Between the cracks of thunder, a faint sound drifted through the storm. A knock, soft, hesitant, then again, more urgent. Clay grabbed the rifle, moving slow but steady to the door. His boots creaked across the wooden floorboards as the wind hissed at the seams of the cabin. When he pulled the door open, rain slapped his face. And there, kneeling in the mud, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 20. Her clothes were torn, soaked through. Mud streaked her pale skin. A bruise blossomed along her jawline, her lips split and swollen. Her hair clung in damp strands to her face, but it was her eyes that held him, wide, glassy, full of exhaustion and terror. "Please," she rasped, voice nearly lost beneath the wind. "Don't send me back." For a long moment, Clay said nothing. His eyes, sharp from years of watching the land, took in every detail. The bruises, the raw, scraped wrists, the look of someone who'd been running for miles, from something or someone. He could have shut the door. He should have. Trouble followed girls like her. But some part of him, rusted over with years of silence, remembered kindness, remembered Sarah, remembered James. "You can stay," he said gruffly, "for tonight." Inside, the girl sat by the fire, steam rising from her damp clothes as the heat began to soak into her bones. Her name was Lila Monroe. Her voice still shook as she spoke, the words brittle as cracked glass. Her father had died back east. She'd been orphaned, taken in by a traveling preacher who promised safety. But promises were cheap. The preacher sold her to a gang, rough men with cruel eyes and rougher hands. 2 nights ago, she escaped. She'd been running ever since, through brush and creek, hiding from their dogs. Clay listened, face unreadable. A war raged in his chest, caution, suspicion, and that quieter voice, the one that hadn't spoken in years, whispering of decency. "You can rest," he told her at last, "but I'm keeping my rifle close." Lila managed a weak smile, curling beneath a blanket by the hearth. Her eyes fluttered shut, the exhaustion overtaking her. As the wind howled outside, Clay stepped onto the porch. His eyes drifted to the hills beyond the ranch, dark shapes rolling under the storm clouds. And there, standing just beyond the fence line, barely visible in the gloom, was a figure. Still, watching, tall, lean, the faint glint of metal at his belt. A shadow among shadows. Then the lightning flashed, and the figure was gone. But Clay's instincts, honed sharp by years alone, told him plain. They weren't alone. Morning broke with a bruised sky and a heavy stillness hanging over the plains. The storm had passed, but the land bore its scars. Branches snapped, puddles pooled in wagon ruts, and the earth, sodden and black, smelled of rain and unease. Clay Maddox was already saddling his horse when Lila stepped onto the porch. Her eyes were wary, but steadier now. Beneath the bruises and fear was something else, a spark of defiance, a stubborn thread of survival. "They'll come looking," she said. Clay nodded. "I reckon they already are." The tracks by the fence told the story. Hoof prints, boot marks. Someone had been watching the cabin last night, and they hadn't come for conversation. Inside, Clay loaded his Winchester, checking each round with quiet efficiency. His revolver lay on the table, oiled and ready. Lila hovered near the hearth, worry twisting her features. "You should run," Clay said, voice low. "Take my mare. Cut east. They might not follow." But Lila shook her head. "They will, and I'm done running." Her words carried weight, more than her slight frame suggested. Clay studied her, the way she clenched her jaw, how her shoulders squared despite the fear lingering in her eyes. "Suit yourself," he muttered, strapping the revolver to his hip. By midday they came. 6 riders appeared along the ridge, silhouettes sharp against the pale sky. At their head rode a tall man in a black preacher's coat, the white of his collar dulled with dust and sweat. His face was lean, handsome once, but hollowed by cruelty and arrogance. The others were rough men, armed and ready, their eyes cold. Clay and Lila stood at the fence line, Eli standing bare beside them. Eli had come at dawn, his arrival silent as a whisper of wind. The Ute warrior said little, but his presence steadied Clay in a way few things could. They shared old scars, old battles, the kind that didn't need words. The preacher reined in, his voice carried across the field, smooth as snake oil. "Mornin', friend. I believe you have something of mine." Clay didn't answer. The preacher's eyes drifted to Lila. His smile never reached them. "Girl made promises. Broke 'em. She belongs to me." "She ain't property," Clay said flatly. The preacher chuckled. "Out here, everything's property." His men fanned out, hands resting on rifles and pistol grips. The air coiled tight with threat. Eli stepped forward, tomahawk at his belt, bow across his back. "You sold a child," Eli said, his voice a quiet blade. "You'll answer for it." The preacher's smile faded. His eyes darted to Clay. "You sure you want this fight? You're just one man." Clay leveled the Winchester, steady and sure. "2," Eli corrected. The preacher's men hesitated, uncertainty flickering. Clay's gaze flicked to Lila. Fear danced behind her eyes, but her chin lifted. "3," Clay said. The preacher's expression soured. The false civility peeled away, leaving something mean and desperate. "So be it." The first shot cracked like thunder. Clay dropped behind the fence post, returning fire. Wood splintered. The preacher's men scattered, bullets whining through the air. Eli moved like a ghost, weaving between cover, his bow singing, arrows finding their marks with deadly precision. Lila crouched near the cabin, Clay's spare revolver gripped in both hands. Her knuckles were white, but her aim was steady. The fight was sharp, brutal. One rider fell, clutching his side. Another's horse screamed, bucking him to the ground. The preacher, teeth bared, fired from behind a scrub oak, his shots wild with frustration. Clay's rifle barked. Another man dropped. Eli charged, tomahawk flashing, and the last rider fled, hooves pounding toward the hills. Only the preacher remained, cornered, bleeding, but defiant. Lila stepped forward, revolver raised. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were cold now. The preacher laughed, spitting blood. "Gonna shoot me, girl? You ain't got it in you." Clay watched, silent, giving her the choice. For a moment, the air held still. Then Lila lowered the gun. Clay stepped in, rifle steady. "I do," he said simply. A single shot echoed. The preacher fell, dust curling around him like smoke. Silence settled over the ranch. They buried the bodies on the hill, far from the cabin. Eli lingered by his horse. "You done hidin'?" he asked. Clay's eyes drifted to Lila, watching the horizon, her face tired but resolute. "Yeah," Clay said softly. "We're done." Eli nodded once and rode off, a shadow against the setting sun. Clay turned to the girl. "You stayin'?" Lila looked at the hills, the grave markers beyond, the battered cabin. "For now," she said, and for the first time in years, the ranch felt less empty. The past still whispered on the wind, but the future had a voice again.